While my daughter lay gasping for breath in the intensive care unit, fighting for her life against death, my son-in-law was raising a glass of champagne on a yacht off the coast of Santa Monica, laughing gleefully amid blaring music. And just 1 hour later, it was my own hand that cut off his entire life of lies. If you are listening to this story, leave a comment to let me know what you think of his actions. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every bit of support from you is encouragement for me to continue telling truths many would rather hide. People often say time can ease the pain, but since the day Helen, my wife, passed away, I have learned that some wounds never heal. She was my life partner and my silent collaborator in every blueprint I ever designed. I sketched towers, buildings that touched the sky of Seattle, yet my own home, since that day, has been nothing but empty. For 5 years, I locked myself away in a small apartment on the outskirts, living quietly with my workshop, flipping through old designs, pretending that was enough to cover the loneliness. Until one April morning, when I happened to see an old photo fall from a sketchbook. A photo of Claire, my only daughter, smiling brightly in a small kitchen. Beside her was Lucas, holding up a crayon drawing, and Sophie laughing, her hair a tangled mess. Those three faces cut straight into my heart. I realized it had been far too long since I last hugged my daughter, since I last heard my grandchildren's cheerful cries of, "Grandpa!" And Helen, if she were alive, would scold me for letting the distance stretch to 3 years. At that very moment, I decided to fly to Los Angeles. No announcement, no message. I wanted to give Claire and the children a true surprise. In my imagination, the reunion would be simple. I knock. Claire opens the door with radiant eyes. The two little ones run into my arms, and Brian, Claire's husband, though sometimes distant, would at least manage a polite smile. That picture alone was enough to warm the rest of my life. The plane left Seattle, carrying me through white clouds. When the wheels touched down in Los Angeles, my heart pounded like the first time I took Helen to an architecture exhibition in New York. I pulled out my phone, typed a quick message to Claire. "Landing in 20 minutes. Get ready for a surprise." But then I stopped. No, I had to keep it a secret until the very moment I stood at her door. I wanted to see the true look of surprise. On the way from the airport to Pasadena, I sat quietly in the back seat of an Uber, watching rows of tall palms stretch under the afternoon sun. Los Angeles was nothing like misty, rainy Seattle. Here the sun blazed, the sky was clear, the streets alive. I opened my bag and ran my fingers over the small wooden box I had crafted in my workshop. It was a gift for Claire. Inside was her mother's wedding ring. I wanted my daughter to keep it and one day pass it to Sophie. I believed Helen somewhere would smile to see it. The car stopped in front of a white 2-story house with a low wooden fence. I smiled. It was indeed Claire's house, tidy, bright, decorated by her own hands. But as I stepped out, a strange feeling came over me. The lawn was withered, and dry leaves scattered everywhere. The flower beds Claire once proudly photographed each spring were now barren. The mailbox was overflowing with envelopes, a few fallen to the ground, their edges yellowed by sun and wind. I bent to pick them up, an electricity bill, an advertising magazine, a package in Brian's name that had sat there at least 10 days. I froze. Claire was meticulous. Never would she let things look this way. I went to the porch and rang the bell. The sound echoed inside the house. I waited. No footsteps, no children's laughter. I pressed again, longer, still silence. I knocked, called loudly, "Claire, it's Dad! Claire!" Only the faint whistling wind through the door crack. I went around back. Through the fence I saw patio furniture covered in dust, the little vegetable garden with only dry, broken stalks, and Sophie's tricycle lying sideways, one wheel squeaking in the breeze. The whole scene looked abandoned. I returned to the front door and sank onto the step. The wooden box in my hand grew heavy, pressing with the weight of 100 memories. The excitement I felt leaving Seattle was now replaced with a vague dread. I remembered Brian's voice, months earlier, telling me Claire was weak, that she needed more tests. I had sent money immediately, without hesitation. But if Claire was truly so ill, why was the house silent, the garden neglected, the mailbox stuffed, the children's laughter gone? It was as if the whole family had vanished weeks ago. While I wrestled with these thoughts, I heard a soft voice behind me. An elderly woman, about 70, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and holding garden shears, stepped from the neighboring house. She asked if I was looking for the Turners. I jumped up, nodded. "Yes, I'm Edward Grant, Claire's father." "Where's the family? I can't reach them." She frowned, said she wasn't sure, but for at least 3 weeks she hadn't heard the children or seen anyone come or go. At first she thought that they were on a long vacation, but the silence was becoming strange. I forced a smile to thank her, but the moment she turned, my smile vanished. I stared at the door, still tightly shut, dread rising unnamed. I pulled out my phone and dialed Claire, the ringtone, then voicemail. I tried again, once more. The same. Suddenly I remembered Brian had mentioned Claire sometimes visited UCLA Medical Center. The thought struck like the only lifeline in chaos. If no one was home, if Claire was truly weak, maybe she was there. A chill ran down my spine. It had been years since I felt such primal fear, the fear of losing family, of losing the only thing left after Helen. I leapt up, hurried to the street, and flagged a taxi. My voice trembled, nearly breaking. "UCLA Medical Center! Hurry!" The car sped off. I clutched the wooden box to my chest, ears pounding with my racing heartbeat. Only one thought remained. I must find my daughter before it's too late. In the taxi rushing down the 110 freeway toward downtown Los Angeles, I kept staring at the digital clock on the dashboard. Every passing minute cut like a knife. I tried to reassure myself. Claire was only weak, maybe needing special care. But the image of the empty house, the overflowing mailbox, the wilted garden haunted me, pulling my mind into chaos. Brian's words echoed vividly in my head. 3 months earlier, the phone rang while I was bent over in my workshop. It was Brian's number. I remember his voice hoarse, forcing tension down. "Dad, Claire's been so weak." "She's tired all the time. Just saw the doctor, and they said she needs more specialized tests." "The costs?" "Well, you know how expensive everything is here. If you could help, Claire would be less worried." I had sunk onto the wooden chair, heart pounding. The thought of my daughter exhausted from her interior design work already troubled me, and hearing specialized tests was like an alarm bell. Without a second thought, I agreed. "Just send the account information. I'll transfer it." That day, I sent $10,000, the savings from my retirement fund. And after sending it, I called Claire. She laughed faintly on the phone. "I'm just a little weak, Dad. Just some checkups. Don't worry." Her voice sounded truly weary, making me believe Brian's words. About a month later, past midnight, the phone rang again. Brian's voice was urgent. Claire had to be admitted temporarily for infusions. They said it's a special drug, but insurance won't cover it. More than $20,000 in total. Could you help? I don't want Claire to know. She would only be sad and anxious. I remember looking around the empty room. Helen's face in the photo frame on my desk seemed to scold me. "You're hiding things from your daughter again?" But I still trusted my son-in-law, thinking he only wanted to protect his wife from worry. I transferred $25,000, and again I called Claire to check in. She whispered weakly, "Dad, I did go to the hospital. I'm so tired, but the doctor said keep trying. Don't worry too much about me." In her faint voice, I believed Brian hadn't exaggerated. After that time, I did one more thing. I opened a secondary account, kept some money in it, and gave Brian the authority to withdraw when needed. I thought to myself that I was old, often busy in the workshop or visiting old sites and friends, and sometimes not able to answer the phone. Instead of having Claire and Brian anxiously wait for my response, I wanted them to have a source ready to rely on. I hoped that money would help cover medications and hospital bills more smoothly, because to me, family was the most important thing. Deep down, I even felt grateful that my daughter had a husband who took care of her when she was ill. Brian might not have been wealthy, but that was fine because I was still here to support him. As long as he stayed by Claire's side, caring for her, and I covered the rest, this family would remain strong. After those times, I began to see Claire looking better. One day she called on video. Her complexion seemed a bit brighter, and she even laughed while telling me how Sophie was practicing dance, and Lucas proudly showed a watercolor painting. I even received some family photos at the park that Brian sent saying, "Everything is moving forward well." Seeing those pictures, I felt relieved, believing the hard stage was over. I told myself Claire was recovering, and perhaps there was nothing left to worry about. That peace of mind made me go a long time without visiting, thinking it was best to let her little family stay calm while I just checked in with occasional calls. Now, sitting in the taxi toward UCLA, all those memories flooded back into my mind. I remembered each transfer, each brief call with Claire. I even remembered the family photos he sent, those moments when Claire smiled faintly yet still shone. Those things kept me reassured for so long, to the point that today I thought coming to Los Angeles would be a visit full of surprise and joy. And now I only wish the taxi would reach the hospital faster, so I could confirm whether Claire was truly there, to end the torment clawing inside me. The taxi turned onto Beverly Boulevard, and the golden light spilling from the shop signs on both sides made me feel like I was inside a wavering dream. The UCLA Medical Center building appeared ahead, massive and cold, all glass and steel gleaming in the night. The driver glanced back and spoke softly. "We have arrived, sir." I nodded, my hand gripping the wooden box in my backpack as if holding the only thread connecting me to my daughter. The automatic doors slid open and a rush of cold air struck me. Inside was a vast hospital lobby, bright white lights glaring, people hurried by, nurses pushing injection carts, doctors buried in charts, a few relatives slumped in chairs. Every breath, every footstep echoed the tension of a place where every second could be decisive. I walked straight to the reception desk, my voice hoarse. "Excuse me, I need to ask about patient Claire Turner. I am her father, Edward Grant." The clerk typed quickly, and her eyes hesitated briefly. "Please wait a moment." The silence of a few seconds stretched like a century. Then she looked up. "You are direct family? May I see your identification?" My hands trembling, I handed over my ID card. She checked, then nodded slightly. "Your daughter is in the oncology ward, intensive care unit." I went numb. Those words crashed into my heart like a hammer. Oncology. Intensive care. All sound around me seemed to vanish. I clutched the counter to keep from collapsing. Struggling for breath, I stammered, Her condition? Please go to the 7th floor, room 721. The attending doctor will explain more clearly." The elevator crept upward, each number lighting up, dragging the weight like years. In the cabin, I saw my reflection in the dull steel mirror, an old, haggard face, eyes red. I tried to imagine Claire lying in bed, maybe just a little tired, but the dread tore at my chest like an iron hook. When the doors opened, the sharp smell of disinfectant hit me. A long corridor stretched, pale neon lights flooding everything. I hurried down, heart pounding. At the end, the sign, "Oncology ICU," appeared. A short doctor with silver-rimmed glasses stepped from the duty room. He looked at me with a touch of sympathy. "Are you a relative of patient Turner?" "Yes, I am her father. I am sorry. Your daughter has late-stage ovarian cancer. We have been treating her for weeks, but the disease is progressing fast. Her condition now is very critical." My vision blurred. I clung to the wall, breath ragged. Cancer. Late stage. I shook my head, mouth dry. Impossible. Just months ago, she only said she was tired from work. I even saw the photos she sent. She was still smiling. The doctor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. That can happen. In the early stage, many patients hide symptoms, not wanting to worry loved ones. But by the time of admission, it is often too late. Claire mentioned you often. Perhaps she feared telling you this news would break you. My chest tightened, as if crushed. Brian's words from those calls flooded back, but instead of doubt, I only felt foolish for not coming sooner. If I had come earlier, maybe I could have held her hand at the start of treatment. You may visit her, the doctor said quietly. I walked like a sleepwalker into room 721, and then my world collapsed. Claire lay there, so thin I almost did not recognize her. Her skin was pale, her hair sparse from chemotherapy, her body small and lost in white sheets and IV lines. The monitor beeped slowly, like the weak beating of my own heart. Her eyes opened, gaze hazy, but when she saw me, her lips curved into a faint smile. Dad, I collapsed at her side, grasping her cold, fragile hand. It's Dad, sweetheart. I am here. I won't leave again. Tears streamed down, soaking her hand. I kissed those thin fingers, felt every sharp bone. Memories surged. Little Claire running to school with the new bag Helen sewed, the day she graduated college, the day she stood in a wedding dress beside Brian. And now she lay there, gasping on the edge of life. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to worry. You still miss Mom. I was afraid you couldn't take it. Her voice was weak, but each word cut into my heart like a blade. I stroked her hair, choking. Don't apologize. I am the one who should beg forgiveness for not being here when you needed me most. But I am here now. From now on, let me handle everything. Claire closed her eyes, tears rolling down onto the white pillow. I sat there, clutching her hand, filled with agony yet burning with resolve. No matter what, I would not let my daughter fight alone again. And when I looked up through the window, a thought struck. Where was Brian? Why was the husband who promised to care for her at all times not here? I sat by Claire's bed for a long time, listening to the monitor beep like a drum in my chest. The stark white room, the cold fluorescent lights made her face even paler. I gently adjusted her blanket, stroked her hair, then glanced around. No flowers, no cards on the table. On the plastic chair by the window, no man's jacket, no half-finished coffee cup. Everything was too clean, too empty. Where is Brian, Claire? I asked hoarsely. Claire opened her eyes and hesitated. Her gaze avoided mine, and my heart sank. He said he was busy. An important project. A project? While you're lying here, my voice hardened, but I forced restraint. I did not want to burden my fragile daughter further. Dad, don't blame him. I know he's worried. It's just that he's not good at facing illness. He said he would come back before the end of the week. Claire's voice was faint, as if she were both defending him and comforting herself. I tightened my grip on her hand, swallowing the lump in my throat. You don't need to find excuses for him. If it's real love, no one leaves his wife in the ICU for a project. Claire closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. I stayed silent, my heart twisting. I knew that in this situation, reproach would only hurt her more, but Brian's absence was like a blade nailed into my head. When Claire drifted to sleep, I quietly stood and left the room. The corridor was empty, only my footsteps echoing back. I found the nurse's station and asked cautiously, "Excuse me, may I ask, has the husband of the patient in room 721 been visiting his wife?" The nurse looked up, a bit startled. I'm Claire Turner's father." She nodded and checked the log. According to the records, during the first 3 weeks, he signed in a few times. But for the past 2 weeks, we haven't seen him. Usually, only a close friend of Miss Claire brings the 2 children to visit briefly and then leaves. I was stunned. 2 weeks without coming. While my daughter lay there fighting hour by hour, he disappeared. My clenched fist trembled. Back in the room, I saw Claire's phone on the table, plugged into the charger. A thought flashed through me. I picked it up and looked at the call history. Brian's number appeared only sporadically, the most recent being 4 days ago. I dialed. It rang a few times, then cut off. No answer. I tried again. The same. Right then, the screen lit up with a notification. Brian had posted something new. I hesitated, then opened it. A photo appeared. Brian standing on the deck of a yacht, shirt unbuttoned, raising a glass of champagne with a few other men grinning around him. The caption, "Live to the fullest. Enjoy the rewards. The future is wide open," followed by a clinking wineglasses emoji. I was stunned. While Claire was wasting away by the hour, he was toasting to, enjoying life. Heat surged in me, but I took a deep breath to steady myself. This was not the time to explode. Claire needed me to be calm. I turned off the screen and set the phone down. That night, I sat by Claire's bed until morning. Each time she woke, I held her hand and smiled to reassure her. But in my mind, a storm had begun. I remembered every dollar I sent, every hazy bill, every time Claire weakly told me, "Don't worry." I had believed Brian was taking care of his wife, but the reality, the evidence before me, he was nowhere to be found. At dawn, when the first light slipped through the window, I stepped into the corridor and pulled out my phone. I dialed Brian again. It rang. This time his voice came on a bit rushed. "Hello? Dad? I'm very busy. What's going on?" I ground out each word, keeping my tone level and cold. "Busy? Your wife is in the ICU in critical condition. You've been gone for 2 weeks, not picking up calls. What could be so important?" The line was silent for a moment. Then Brian cleared his throat. "Dad, you have to understand, I'm under a lot of pressure too. Work is the main source of income. If I collapse, who will handle the hospital bills?" I gave a dry, strangled laugh. "Hospital bills? Do you think I don't know who's been covering most of them?" He fell silent. I could clearly hear noise in the background. Voices, music, wind, the unmistakable sounds of a ship's deck. The social media image flashed again in my mind. "Brian," I said slowly, "I don't care what excuse you have. But a real man does not abandon his wife in the ICU. If you don't show up at this hospital today, consider that there is nothing left for us to say." I hung up, my hand shaking. This was no longer a suspicion. This was the bare truth. My son-in-law had abandoned my daughter. When I returned to the room, Claire opened her eyes and asked softly, "Dad, did you talk to Brian?" I hesitated. Seeing my daughter's fragile gaze, I couldn't bring myself to tell her the cruel truth. I only squeezed her hand and whispered, "Don't worry. I'm here. I'll take care of everything." But deep down, another resolve was growing. I would find out what Brian was doing and where he was. And if what I had seen was only the surface, then the truth beneath was surely far darker. After hanging up, I sat in silence for hours in the small family lounge, staring at an empty patch of white wall. The hum of the air conditioner, the PA calling, doctors, all of it became a distant din. All I could hear was the music and laughter from Brian's end of the line, merging with the image of him raising a champagne glass on a yacht deck. My hand trembled as I reopened Claire's social media app. Brian's account appeared immediately in the friend list. I scrolled down. It wasn't just one photo. There were many. A shot of him in a VIP cabin, red wine swirling in the glass, a clip of him laughing as he jumped into the turquoise water of Marina del Rey. Another photo, Brian in a white silk shirt, arm around a young woman in a bikini, her face hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. His caption, "Life is to be enjoyed. Work hard, play hard." I felt blood rush to my face. Even without any proof about the money yet, these images alone showed how he had betrayed Claire. While my daughter wasted away in a hospital bed, her husband was living like a wealthy bachelor. I began taking screenshots. Every photo, every video, every caption. Years in architecture had made me accustomed to storing and organizing data. This time, the blueprints were no longer houses but pieces of betrayal. But social media wasn't the only evidence. Brian's voice from earlier calls echoed in my head. Dad, this drug is more than 4,000 per dose. Claire needs a special infusion. Insurance won't cover it. I had believed and transferred money without ever asking for clear invoices. I opened my phone and logged into the secondary bank account, the one I had once authorized Brian to use to conveniently handle urgent matters for Claire. My fingers shook as I scrolled through the transaction history, and then the truth sliced into my eyes like a cold blade. Line item, Marina Yacht Club Charter, 15,000 US dollars. Date, exactly yesterday. Another, Beverly Hills Boutique, 3,200 US dollars, 10 days ago. Ritz-Carlton dinner, 1,450 US dollars, 2 weeks earlier. The list went on, all expenses for luxury, parties, fancy cars, and hotels. Not a single transaction to a hospital, clinic, or pharmacy. I sat there numb. Every sum I had sent, believing it would buy Claire more days of life, had become wine, suits, and bloated dinners. I clenched my teeth until I tasted blood. My vision blurred, yet I patiently screenshotted every transaction, saving each piece of evidence. The more I read, the clearer it became. Brian had turned his wife's pain and his father-in-law's worry into a goldmine for his own indulgence. I had once believed my son-in-law was a man who cared for his family. It was all an act. I jumped to my feet and began pacing the cramped room. Part of me wanted to storm straight to Marina del Rey, to drag him out by the collar in front of his drinking buddies. But reason held me back. If I caused a scene, everything would explode into chaos, and it might not help Claire at all. I had to stay calm, gather more, and make a plan. At that moment, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. You should know the truth about Brian. Tomorrow night, Harbor Lights Cafe, Pier 7, Marina del Rey. 8 o'clock, I squinted at the words. Who would arrange to meet me exactly where Brian had rented a yacht? A friend? An enemy? A witness? Whoever it was, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I sat down, clutching my head. In my mind, Claire's face appeared again, her frail hand trembling as it gripped mine. She had no idea that the expensive medicine I thought I was paying for never reached her. She trusted her husband, trusted me, believed that in her fight against death, she had support. I swallowed hard, whispering in silence, Daughter, I promise I will not let that man hurt you ever again. The message still glared from the screen. I read it at least 5 times. You should know the truth about Brian. It's tomorrow night. Harbor Lights, Cafe, Pier 7, Marina del Rey. 8 o'clock. No name, no explanation. Only an appointment. That whole night, I tossed and turned. The monitor in Claire's room beeped steadily like a countdown clock. I held her hand, torn between 2 fires. One wanted to stay, guarding every breath. The other pushed me to go out, to uncover what was hidden. The next morning, I forced myself to stay calm while talking with Claire. I told her old stories, the time she scribbled on the living room wall, the family picnic when Sophie still couldn't ride a bike. Claire smiled faintly, a spark of life in her eyes. I nodded, choking back tears, and promised her that in the evening I would step out, only briefly, and return right away. When the sun sank behind Los Angeles towers, I left the hospital, taking a taxi straight to Marina del Rey. The harbor road glowed with golden lights reflected on dark, rippling water. The salty sea wind was nothing like the dry heat of downtown. Harbor Lights sat tucked beside Pier 7, a small cafe with a wooden awning and neon script glowing green. I stepped inside. Warm yellow light spilled across polished wooden tables. A few groups chatted in low tones. A woman in the far corner waved. I recognized her instantly from Brian's social media photo, the one in the wide-brimmed hat, her face hidden. Now, with no hat, her eyes met mine, steady but weary. "I'm Anna," she said softly as I sat down. "You probably recognize me? I used to be Brian's friend, at least before things went too far." I gripped the hot coffee cup. "You sent me that message?" Anna nodded. "I can't watch him deceive everyone any longer." "You need to know. Brian hasn't only abandoned his wife, he's been exploiting Claire's illness to squeeze money." I sat frozen, though my chest roared inside. "Explain." Anna spoke with a trembling voice. She worked in media and had met Brian through projects. Recently, Brian bragged he had a private fund from his wife's family, money he used for investments and luxury. He rented yachts, booked luxury hotels, threw parties, and openly admitted he was still pulling from the secondary account. Once he even laughed and said, Anna locked eyes with me, "That old man trusts me blindly. All I have to do is toss Claire some ordinary pills, tell him there's special treatments, and he hands over more cash." A chill ran down my spine. No longer suspicion. This was a nightmare revealed. He had dared to use Claire's sickness as a cover to profit. Rage detonated in my chest like a bomb. I closed my eyes, blood boiling. Images clashed in my head. Claire gasping for breath, while he toasted under blasting music. Anna slid a small USB across the table. Inside are photos, clips, even bank records I copied when Brian left his email open while drunk. It shows how he's been living these months. My hands trembled as I took it. "Why are you helping me?" Anna lowered her head, voice shaking. "Because I can't stay silent. My mother died of cancer. I watched her struggle each day, so I know how much real care matters. When I realized Brian was deceiving both you and Claire, I felt nothing but pain and pity. I had to speak, even if it drags me into trouble too." We sat in silence, waves crashing outside. I knew it was time to act, not just for Claire, but for Sophie and Lucas, who could never understand why their father had vanished in their family's darkest hour. Leaving the cafe, the sea wind whipped harder. I clutched the USB, striding toward the taxi stand. Inside me, fury had hardened into cold resolve. I would use every piece of evidence, every means I could to make Brian pay. I returned to the hospital as dawn broke. After the night at the harbor, after Anna's confession and the weight of the USB, I knew I needed one more thing: official proof from the hospital. I couldn't let this rest on testimony and screenshots alone. I needed facts from Claire's doctors. Dr. Patel met me in a cramped, paper-stacked office, his calm eyes seasoned from breaking bad news. "Doctor?" I said slowly, steadying my voice. "I want full details of my daughter's treatment plan. Every figure, every expense, every medication used." He raised his brows slightly, then opened the file, flipping pages. Claire was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She began standard chemotherapy, paclitaxel and carboplatin. These are covered largely by insurance. The remaining costs were handled by the Patient Support Fund. I nodded, eyes fixed on each line. Anna had spoken of fake medicine, and now every word from the doctor nailed the coffin on Brian's lies. "Can you confirm," I pressed, "that the hospital never demanded tens of thousands for drugs outside insurance?" "Correct," Dr. Patel said firmly. "Those numbers aren't in her records. If someone told you otherwise, they were deceiving you." I drew a long breath, steadying the tremor in my chest. No more doubts. This was confirmation from the authority. Every plea Brian made for money, every single one, was fabricated. "Please print all treatment and billing records," I said coldly. Dr. Patel nodded, pressing a button to call a nurse. While waiting, he looked at me with sympathy. "I know this will hurt, but please don't let Claire know right now. Spirit matters greatly in treatment. We need her to keep her faith." I nodded, gripping my hand tight. "I understand. She doesn't need more pain, but there will come a time when I must show Claire who truly abandoned her." Leaving the doctor's office with the thick file in hand, I no longer felt the dizziness of the past days. Instead, there was a strange calm. Like an architect holding the finished blueprint, I now had everything needed to construct the building of truth. This time, my anger did not explode into chaos. It compressed, hardened into a single will. Prepare. Prepare to expose. Prepare to demolish the wall of lies Brian had built from my money and Claire's trust. I returned to my daughter's room, saw her sleeping peacefully, her small hand resting outside the blanket. I set the file on the chair, touched her hand gently, and whispered, "You will never be deceived again. I will protect you to the end." In the family lounge, the harsh fluorescent light cast my reflection in the glass like that of a stranger. Before me lay two piles. One, Claire's medical records from Dr. Patel, cost clear and legitimate. The other, the bank statements I had printed, crowded with charges for yachts, hotels, boutiques. I placed them side by side. One side, medical truth, the other, financial truth. Stacked together, the gap between them was the abyss of betrayal. I opened my laptop, plugged in the USB Anna had given me. Brian's face appeared, grinning in a white suit, champagne glass glittering in the sunset. Electronic music thumped. The next video showed him slinging his arm over a friend, bragging, "My wife's old man still has plenty of money." The sound stabbed into my ears like rusted knives. I paused the video, leaned back, and breathed deeply. No more suspicion. The veil had torn, revealing the true face of my son-in-law. I began cataloging systematically, as if preparing a construction plan. 1. Official medical records confirm low costs, mostly covered by insurance. 2. Bank statements. Brian is draining hundreds of thousands for luxury. 3. Photos and videos from Anna's USB, visual proof of his lifestyle. 4. Anna's testimony, an insider from the parties. Each point I wrote into my old leather notebook, once filled with sketches made with Helen. This time it was not a house design, but the blueprint to destroy a man who had betrayed my family. The next morning I met with an old colleague turned family lawyer, Mark Levine. Tall, lean, with graying hair and sharp eyes behind glasses, he listened silently to my account, then tapped his fingers on the desk. "Edward, what you've brought, the hospital files, the bank records, the photos, all of it is powerful. With this evidence, if Brian tries for a divorce or custody of Sophie and Lucas, he will fail. In fact, we can press charges for fraud and embezzlement." I nodded, my voice rough. "What I care about most is Claire. I don't want her to suffer another shock, but I can't let Brian keep pretending to be the devoted husband." Mark's eyes hardened. "Sometimes to be free one must endure pain once. But I understand. We'll prepare carefully, so when the truth breaks, Brian will have no escape." I clenched my fist. Yes, precision. I couldn't let emotions sweep me like a flood. I had stood before skyscraper blueprints, knowing one wrong line could collapse the structure. This was the same. I needed accuracy, patience, cold focus. Leaving Mark's office under gray Los Angeles skies, I looked up at the darkening clouds and thought of Helen. She used to say, "Storms always pass, but only houses built strong still stand." My family had been hollowed by Brian, but I would rebuild it, stronger, firmer. Back at the hospital, I entered Claire's room. She was awake, leaning on pillows, hair sparse, but her eyes lit when she saw me. Sophie and Lucas were there, chattering about school, their laughter filling the sterile room. My chest tightened. They didn't know their father had betrayed their mother so cruelly. Claire squeezed my hand, whispering, "Dad, I'm sorry for making you worry so much." I couldn't answer, only squeezed back. In my mind, I swore, "No, Claire, someone else owes the apology, and I will make him pay." That night, alone in the lounge, I gathered every piece of evidence into a black leather case. I knew the day of confrontation was close. The veil had torn, and the light of truth would expose everything. I could not wait. If Brian were left unchecked, he would spin more lies, drain more money, and perhaps even maneuver for custody. I had to know how he'd react when cornered, but it was not yet time to reveal everything. That evening, I stood in the underground garage of the luxury building where Brian rented. Through quiet calls, I had tracked him, not living with Claire, but in a lavish Santa Monica apartment. The bank records explained it all. Over $5,000 a month in rent, withdrawn regularly from the secondary account. Near midnight, the roar of an engine echoed. A silver Porsche slid down the ramp, headlights cutting through the dark. I stepped from the shadows, blocking the entrance. The car screeched to a halt. The door swung open and Brian stepped out, irritation flashing until he saw me. He froze, then forced a smile. "Dad, what are you doing here? At this hour, shouldn't you be at the hospital with Claire?" My eyes locked on him, cold as steel. Yes, I should be with Claire. But something more important brought me. Finding out what the man she trusts most after me is doing behind her back. His brows knit, but he tried to keep calm. "What are you talking about?" "I'm still caring for Claire. I just came from meeting clients. You know, consulting work keeps me busy." I took one step closer, my voice low and hard. "Clients on yachts? Clients in five-star hotels at $1,000 dinners? Or clients in the photos I've saved on my phone?" Brian paled. He forced a weak laugh, rubbing his neck. "Dad, that's just networking. Just building relationships to earn money for the family." My eyes narrowed, fury controlled, but sharp. "For the family?" "With money from the secondary account I set up. Money meant for Claire's treatment, for her hospital bills. You call that caring for family?" His mouth opened, but no words came. The silence echoed through the cold garage. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to back up a step. "Listen carefully, Brian. I have everything. Bank statements, hospital records, even a witness. I know every dollar you withdrew, every party, every time you abandoned your wife in the hospital." He trembled slightly, then tried to recover his swagger. "You think you can scare me? You have nothing on me. Claire still trusts me, and the kids still call me Dad. If you make a scene, the first person to be hurt will be Claire herself." I stared at him, then let out a dry, quiet laugh that made him freeze. "You're right. Claire will be hurt if she learns the truth. But don't be mistaken. I'm not protecting you. I'm only waiting for the right moment to show the whole world who you really are." For a few seconds, Brian stood petrified, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold night wind. He tried to look calm, but I saw the restlessness in his eyes. He knew the game had begun to turn. I turned my back and walked toward the stairwell. Before leaving, I said evenly coldly, "You have time, Brian." "Not much. Enjoy the last days of your charade, because before long, everything will collapse beneath your feet." I didn't need to turn around to see his reaction. I heard enough. The hurried thud of shoes, the slam of a car door, the engine roaring as if to mask the trembling inside. On the way back to the hospital, I leaned into the taxi seat, gripping the file case. For the first time, I had faced him without hiding anything, and his reaction, flustered, panicked, then fake aggression, was proof of the truth. Brian knew he was about to lose everything. That night, I did not sleep. The image of Brian in the garage, fumbling then feebly snarling, spun through my head. He was afraid, but he hadn't stopped. A man accustomed to living on lies will thrash until the last minute, and I knew that to end this farce, I had to strike where it hurt most, his reputation, his money, and his power over the family. The next morning I went back to Mark Levine, the lawyer friend who had taken my file. His office sat high in a glass tower overlooking downtown Los Angeles. When I entered, Mark was already standing with a fresh stack of documents. "Edward," he said firmly, "I've reviewed everything. Bank statements, medical records, videos, Anna's testimony. We have a case strong enough to take Brian to court." I sat, hands clenched. I don't just want him to lose the case. I want him to lose everything, his career, his friends, and the image he has built all this time. Mark slid the file toward me, then added slowly, "Edward, on the USB you gave me, there are videos and emails that mention Anna directly, the woman who appeared with Brian at those parties. I contacted her. If she agrees to testify, our file won't be dismissible. The door opened. Anna stepped in, her face resolute. I will testify, she said decisively. I've seen too much. If needed, I'll stand in court and tell everything I turn to her, eyes burning. Thank you. I only regret that Claire has to learn the truth this way. Anna shook her head slowly. Hurt wants to be free. My mother suffered from cancer, but at least she knew my father would never abandon her. Claire deserves to know who is truly by her side and who betrayed her. We set the plan. Within 1 week, Mark would file, while preparing the evidence for the court to accept. In that span, I had to keep Claire calm, without letting her suspect anything. On the way back to the hospital, my heart felt heavy. As a father, I always wanted my daughter to live in happiness. But false happiness is a house built on sand. One wave and it collapses. Now I had to be the one to tear down that fake house, even if it meant hurting my daughter once more. That evening I sat by Claire's bed, listening to Sophie and Lucas talk about school. Claire smiled, a glimmer of life in her eyes, but looking deeper into that smile, I saw a shadow of fear. She still believed Brian was merely busy, still hoped he would come back. A lump rose in my chest. All I could do was squeeze her hand and vow silently, "You will soon see the truth, and when that day comes, you will be free." 2 days later, Mark called me. "I've filed. The court has agreed to consider an emergency hearing. Now we prepare for the appearance." I nodded, but part of me knew Brian wouldn't sit still and wait for punishment. He would strike back, perhaps with new lies, perhaps with threats. That didn't scare me. On the contrary, I wanted him to reveal himself before everything was laid bare in court. That night, in the lounge, I sorted the entire file again, marking every page, every figure. Helen once told me, "Justice doesn't always come on its own. Sometimes we have to build it with our own hands." I smiled bitterly. "Helen, this time I'll rebuild justice for our daughter." And I knew the real storm was only beginning. The news spread faster than I expected. Only a few days after Mark filed with the court, Brian already knew. A man used to swimming in media. Consulting circles surely had eyes everywhere, and as predicted, he did not choose silence. That afternoon, just as I returned to the hospital, after meeting the lawyer, my phone buzzed nonstop. First came anonymous messages. "Greedy old man. Are you trying to destroy your daughter's family? People say you're trying to seize custody of your grandkids to keep the money." I frowned and opened social media. A slew of anonymous posts had popped up on Los Angeles community forums, spreading quickly. The content was all alike, accusing me of being a controlling father trying to dominate his adult daughter and 2 grandchildren to appropriate assets. A few accounts even twisted private details, like how I once held financial authority at my architecture firm, turning it into proof that I was greedy, selfish. Clearly, Brian had moved. That evening he called me. His voice was mocking, but a tremor hid beneath it. "You see, I know how to play this game too. If you keep pushing, I'll make this whole city believe you're a heartless man, exploiting your sick daughter just to grab assets." I kept my voice calm, though fury boiled inside. "Keep talking, Brian. Talk until your tongue falls off. It won't change the truth. I have hospital records, bank statements, and a witness ready to take the stand. You have nothing but lies on the internet." He growled, "Don't be so confident. Claire still trusts me, and if you continue, I'll file for divorce first and fight for custody of Sophie and Lucas. Think about it. How's an ailing old man in Seattle going to raise his grandkids?" At that, a stab pierced my heart. Sophie and Lucas, 2 innocent children, he dared to turn them into hostages in this filthy game. I answered, my voice icy. "You just signed your own end, Brian. The court will ask, what kind of father abandons a wife undergoing chemotherapy in the ICU to ride yachts, rent luxury apartments, and throw parties? When that answer appears on the screen, you'll have no chance at custody." I hung up, my hand shaking with rage, but I knew he would keep attacking. And sure enough, the next day, a local tabloid ran. Architect Edward Grant, father of a cancer patient, suspected of exploiting his daughter to regain the spotlight, preparing to seize custody of his grandkids. The piece was clearly Brian's handiwork, packed with unnamed inside sources. I read with my chest tightening, but Mark, my lawyer, only smiled. Don't worry, Edward. This is an old trick, smearing you before court. We won't answer with words. We'll answer with the truth. When the judge sees the evidence, every slander will collapse. That evening I sat again by Claire. She held my hand, her eyes clouded. Dad, I saw things online. They say you're trying to take Sophie and Lucas away. Is that true? My heart clenched. Brian had succeeded in planting doubt in her. I drew a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Claire, I never wanted anything but for you and the kids to be safe. If anyone says otherwise, it's because they're hiding the truth. I'm not fighting for custody. I'm only protecting you. Tears slid down Claire's cheeks. She nodded, though her eyes still wavered. I hated Brian to the bone for stabbing right into her weakness. After she fell asleep, I stepped into the hallway and called Mark. He's starting to use the media. Can we strike back early? Mark answered firmly. Yes. Tomorrow we'll file an expanded motion. All video evidence, bank records, Anna's testimony. I'll ask the judge for an immediate restraining order, so Brian can't approach Claire or the children until the case is done. I nodded, feeling slightly lighter. Brian's dirty tricks had reached their limit, and I knew the more he raged, the closer his collapse. 1 year passed since the ruling. Los Angeles was now only a dark memory, while my family had returned to Seattle, beginning anew. Claire sat by the window of the wooden house I rebuilt by the lake, her black hair thick again, her face healthier than ever. I still remembered that morning when Professor Ellen Morris, one of America's leading oncologists, entered Claire's hospital room. She had been an old colleague of Helen, and through medical ties I had asked her to oversee Claire's treatment. We won't let her fight alone, Professor Morris had said, and she kept her word. Every dose, every exam, every word of encouragement lifted Claire out of the abyss. 6 months ago, the official test results confirmed. Claire was in full remission, no trace of cancer. Sophie and Lucas now played freely in the yard, laughter echoing in the garden Helen once dreamed of. They were back to normal life, school, soccer, painting. Sometimes they still asked about their father, but Claire only smiled sadly. He chose his own path. Then she hugged them, giving twice the love to fill the void. And Brian? The press feasted for months. He was indicted for financial fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of the secondary account. Federal court sentenced him to 7 years in prison, plus civil restitution of over $200,000. The day he was handcuffed and led from the courtroom, cameras flashed wildly, and in the eyes of the public he was no longer a successful consultant, but only a swindler, a betrayer. One autumn evening we sat together on the wooden porch, watching the crimson sunset burn across the lake. Claire sliced cornbread, the recipe Helen had taught us. She looked at me with warm eyes, no longer shadowed by ICU fear. "Dad," she whispered, "I thought I lost everything. But because of you, I see now, losing a cheating husband is nothing compared to keeping my real family." I squeezed her hand, gazing at the starry sky. Somewhere, Helen must be smiling. She would be proud to see us weather the storm, leaving betrayal behind and rebuilding a stronger home. Sophie ran up laughing. "Grandpa, tell the story of how you saved Mom," Lucas shouted. "I want to hear the yacht part." I laughed, pulling them close. "All right, but remember, the real story isn't about me or a yacht. It's about a brave mother who fought her way back to her children." Claire looked at me, eyes shimmering. I nodded, and in that moment, I knew. Justice had prevailed. Love had endured, and the storm had finally passed. My family's story closes here. A betrayer paid his price in court, while my daughter regained her life and her faith. But behind it all, I understood one thing. Justice does not appear by itself. We must rise and build it for those we love. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe, and share this video so others may see. Betrayal, sooner or later, always pays its price. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Your support is the strength that allows me to keep telling the truths no one else dares to speak.